please welcome to the stage, Jackie Handy.
Hello. Thanks for sticking around. Coming here today, I thought I could talk to you about some statistics. Statistics like 1 in 5 people in the transgender community have experienced a hate crime in just the last 12 months. I thought I could give you statistics like approximately 46% of people identifying in the LGBTQ plus community are not out of the closet at work. Or I thought I could give you statistics that talked about the 600,000 people with disabilities in this country alone who are willing and able to work with potentially some small adjustments made, yet are unable to find opportunities. And then I thought, no, I won't do that. I'm here today to talk about the power of I, the power of inclusion, and the power that I and all of us have to make a difference. And I thought the best way I could do that was by sharing some of my own story. And by doing so, we'll explain to you a little bit about why the power of I matters to me. And I really hope that by the end of this story, it will matter just that little bit more to you, too. You see, I was just 5 years old when I first became aware of bullying. My left eye kind of began to turn inwards. I looked a little bit different to the other kids in my street, right? And I'd been a popular kid in my street up until that point. You know, that safety of the in crowd, all kind of similar, playing together, everyone calls for each other. You know how it is? I was one of those kids. But the other kids noticed that something had changed. Something wasn't quite right. And they ganged up. And they pointed fingers. And they called me names across the street. And they laughed at me. And do you know what? The kids that used to come knocking on my door to see if I'd come out to play stopped knocking. But I was lucky, right? I was lucky because my parents got me off to a consultant, the eye was corrected, and everything was fine in the world, right? So I'd gone from this kind of safe space of an in crowd, if you like, overnight, become a bit of a lonely outsider. Know that feeling? And then I'd found my way back, fitting in, back into the in crowd again. And I was popular again. And that remained that way until my teens. In fact, 15, to be exact. Because that was when I guess I finally admitted to myself, you know what, I think I'm different. Unlike all the other girls in my class, I wasn't talking about boys that way. If you know, you know. Clearly some of you do. But you know, this time I was scared because I remembered how it felt to be that outsider. And so what to do? I decided I would tell just a couple of my closest friends, right? And they were all right. You know, we've all got a different map of the world, haven't we? It's the intersectionality in the world, right, that makes us uniquely us. Our gender, our culture, our heritage, our values, our belief systems, our experiences in the world makes us uniquely who we are, right? And so they had never met anyone like me before, but we were already friends, bless you, and we stayed that way. They were all right. But what do teenagers do? And before I knew it, my deep, dark secret was round the school. Oh, by the way, at the Catholic school. Oh, pause for dramatic effect, yeah. And just as I'd feared, just like when I was 5, the other kids noticed, and they ganged up, and they called me names, and they pointed fingers, and they laughed at me. And so many of the friends, or so-called friends I had through school, kind of avoided me. They didn't want to double up with me in exercises in class. I was back as that lonely outsider. Now, here's the thing. I think we all know how it can feel, right? And so Diana's asked you to stand once. I've already checked, by the way, that everyone is okay to do this, so I hope that remains, that you don't mind standing for me for a moment. So please, just stand. And here's the thing, everybody. I'd like you to sit back down again only if you have never felt like the only one. Now, maybe it was because you wore glasses. Maybe it's because you had different colour hair. Maybe it's because your parents had nothing. Maybe it's because your parents had everything. What do you notice? Everyone's on their feet. You see, your differences might not be the same as my differences, but we are all uniquely different, and we all know how it feels to be made to feel different, don't we? I encourage you to hold on just for a moment, because, hey, we're not going into the depths of despair here, but I encourage you to hold on just for a moment to the memories of how it felt to feel like the only one, to feel different, perhaps to be picked on, perhaps to be excluded, perhaps to be laughed at, just simply for being who you are. I thank you. Please sit. Oh, thank you very much. No, I'm not going to leave that. I'm not going to leave that. So it was a pretty tough time. And what I haven't yet told you is that I'm the only child of who was and still is a strict Catholic mother and a father of a generation, if you like, where he would often see difference on his TV screen mocked, ridiculed, as a source of entertainment. What on earth was I going to do? I thought, do you know what? I just won't tell them. I mean, the fact my head was shaved, I've got Timberland boots on, I used to wear braces with a paisley shirt. Oh, they'll never know. But the people closest to us notice when something's not quite right, don't they? And my behaviour had definitely changed, for sure. I'd withdrawn. I spent a lot of time in my bedroom, and I distinctly remember a key moment, which was a Sunday night, and I know it was a Sunday night because I was in my bedroom, as I often was, and if you're of a certain age, you will know that Sunday night was charts night. Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. And you'll also know, if you were anything like me, that you had a cassette recorder. Young people are going, what's a cassette recorder? Really young people are going, what's the chart show? But you'd have your cassette recorder, you'd be trying to pause it just before Bruno Brooks or whoever it was at the time, yeah? Could you ever get it? No. Could you ever? Bruno. But anyway, that's where I was that particular Sunday evening. And I heard my dad booming my name up the stairs. Jackie! I thought, asking me to come downstairs. So, now this works really well on virtual. Not so much here, but anyway. Down the stairs I went. And here my mum was sat on the sofa in the lounge, and he was summoning me into the chair opposite. When I sat down, he looked at me, pointed, and he said, something's not right with you, and we want to know what it is. Kind of wasn't expecting that. And then the 15-year-old bravado kicked in. Oh, I'm all right, there's nothing wrong with me. But, you know, I think I was visibly shaking. at that moment. And carried on. He said, "Your behaviour's changed, my girl. And we want to know why." And he was right. My behaviour had changed. I told you, right? You know, I'd withdrawn, spent a lot of time in my bedroom alone. I'd even actually hit a boy in school. Nothing like that had happened before. Or did it happen since? But that day, the mockery, the laughter, the finger pointing and the name calling, it just got too much, and I punched him straight on the jaw. I mean, you know, years later I realised it was the day homophobia met PMT. and lost, but anyway. You know, when we feel scared, when we feel like we don't belong, it can lead us to act strangely, can't it? Act out of character. If only more of us noticed what was going on with others. Hey, Jason, yeah. If only we took the time to really notice what we noticed. But my parents had. And I was frightened to death. You see, my parents had privilege. Now, do I mean we were an affluent family? Absolutely not. But I mean they had certain privileges. And you may have heard this term in the space. I know we have some people working the space in this room. Privilege, I'm going to give you this, and you may wish to write it down, although I do have, as many of our speakers have here today, a QR code with a handout afterwards. But this is not on it, all right? So if you want my little definition of privilege, here it comes. Privilege is an advantage you have in life that you didn't choose and you can't change. And for the slow writers, I'll repeat that. Privilege is an advantage you have in life that you did not choose and you cannot change. Yeah. Having privilege does not make you a bad person. And you may, because of the intersectionality of the human race, you may both have and lack privilege. Quick example. My lovely wife and I went on our first overseas holiday since the pandemic, actually, in September 2023. Where the hell am I? And we wanted to go somewhere different, somewhere we hadn't been before, and we needed to research. Now, we all research our holidays, of course we do. But how many of you research your holidays to see if you're going to get killed for being who you are? Yay! Right. Isn't it fun? Yeah. There are still many countries in the world where simply for being gay, you can be arrested, you can be imprisoned, you can lose your life. Now, many of you in the room might be thinking, you know, I've never even really thought about it like that. In the context of thinking about somewhere to go on holiday. That, my friends, is just because you have that particular privilege. Yeah? We often don't become aware of the privilege we have until they're compromised. Right? Another example, the lift's out. Now, I didn't mind. This does me good, walk up the stairs, whatever. But is accessibility on your mind whenever you go to an event? If you've never even really thought about it, if you've never had to think about it, it's just because you have a particular privilege. Aren't you very lucky? Having privilege does not make you a bad person. I could go on and on and on about privileges because they show up in very different ways, but I won't. But what I will say is I want you to think about how you use your privilege for good. I'll talk a bit more about it in a moment. But maybe you understand when I talk about my parents having privilege or being privileged in a particular way, maybe you understand what I mean by that. You know, both white, my mum's kind of Christian faith, my father obviously of his gender and so forth. So it goes on, neither with disabilities, etc. I sat in that chair and I still denied there was anything wrong. And quite unknowingly at first, I began to cry. And my dad says, come on. He said, you come with me. We'll leave your mum here, you come with me. You see, the house I grew up in, we had a garage detached from the house, like down the end of the garden, right? So he said, we'll leave your mum here and you come with me down to the garage. So it was like the walk of shame, down to the garage. I was a bit of a mess at this point because I kind of thought, I think this could be it. I think this could be the moment where the people that I love the most in the world are gone. Just like that. I think this could be the moment that the house, the home, where I feel the safest, could be gone. Just like that. I had been raised not to tell lies. So we got into the garage and my father crossed his arms and towered over me. Not that hard, I'm only 5'1" now, but anyway. Most people think this is a stage. I think this is just normality, normal height. I'm a normal height person now. He towered over me and he decided he was going to guess what was wrong. He said, are you taking drugs? I said, no, Dad, no. No, Dad. He said, are you being abused? I said, no, Dad, it's nothing like that. It's nothing like that. I kind of realised I gave something, there's nothing like that, something. But anyway, he carried on. You know when somebody, they're thinking so hard, you can almost hear the cogs ticking in the brain. He said, are you pregnant? No laughter. I said, no, I'm not pregnant, Dad. Clicked his fingers, he did that a lot. He clicked his fingers, he pointed at me, he said, you think you're queer, don't you? I thought, okay, this is the moment. I said, I know I am, Dad. I know I am. I'm sorry. And I put my head in my hands and braced myself for what came next. And what came next changed the course of my life. I didn't know it then, of course, but I know it now. What felt like the longest pause, but actually what was probably seconds at most. My dad opened up his arms. He gave me the biggest hug. And he said, is that all? Isn't that lovely? Yeah, go Dad! In that moment, my dad chose love. Because you know what? When all's said and done, inclusion, my friends, is love. It's love when you're not even sure what it is you're loving, but you choose love anyway. Inclusion is love when you're not even sure you really want to love at that moment. But you choose love anyway. A lovely story. He said, come on, we'll go and tell your mum. I said, we can't. Oh, God. The map of the world that she had, I thought, God, no, we can't do that. He said, come on, go and tell your mum. I did that thing, that thing where you run up the stairs and you hang over. But I heard him go, she thinks she's queer. Silence. I thought, oh, God, she's collapsed. She hadn't collapsed, but clearly she was taking it all in. And, when I said, my dad said, is that all? That's quite true. That's what he said. But really, in reality, is that all? No. In reality, we had many, many conversations. We had a few arguments. But you know, even my mum, who retains her faith to this day, found a way to reconcile that without ever compromising the love she has for me. Right? Isn't that wonderful? So how? That's my story about inclusion and love. But how can you, as speakers, with your speaking businesses, bring more love to the stage, keep your clients loving you, and, Chantal, allow you to stand out just that little bit more? Huh? Gold star, thank you. There's a few silver ones here. We need gold ones next. So I really want you to be thinking about what you can do differently, because often it is small tweaks that make the difference. Tweaks like when, and now we've heard a lot around slides here today, and you're going to see some of this on the handout that I've created for you, the PDF that I've created, which is also available in audio if you need it. But things like slides. We've talked a lot about, you know, it depends what the message is. It depends what you want to, do you want to use your own photographs? It depends on the story. I say something slightly different because I will bet the farm, if I owned one, perhaps I will bet Chantal's farm that at 90% easily of you do not ask this one question to your clients when you are taking a brief about a presentation or keynote or a gig. And that question is on the handout, okay? But I will tell you. That question is, what adjustments do I need to make to my presentation, my session, my talk, my keynote, etc., to enable everybody who will be in attendance to participate equitably? Isn't that a great question? Make sure you write it down. Even more, make sure you use it, right? What adjustments do I, not do I need to, but what adjustments, right? Because we want to seem proactive. Vicky, did I or did I not reach out to you on a couple of occasions before the session and say that very question, basically?
Certainly.
Yes, I did. Why? Because why wouldn't I? Why wouldn't I? And why wouldn't you, right? And when I ask that question of clients or prospective clients, they kind of go, I've never been asked that before. And I think, what a shame. What a shame. Because I think sometimes we think about diversity, equity, and inclusion. The media would have us say, you know, we think about the wokerati. Yeah, proud wokerati right here, right? But it's not about being woke. It's just about thinking a little differently. It's broadening your thinking. When I talk about privilege and having privilege, the people who have the most privileges are the ones who are most likely to be heard. So when you use the power and privilege you have for good, that is a brilliant thing for everyone. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to stand aside. But actually, when you use your privilege really well, what you're doing is you're broadening the space for more people. We have quite a diverse bunch of people here in this room, right? And whether that's visible or whether it's not visible, we know that it exists, right? But how many people in this room do each of you really take the time to get to know? Who do you gravitate towards? The people that you've always gravitated towards? The people who maybe look or seem a bit more like you? Well, that is human nature. But if we want to be more intentional, then surely we can think a little differently. And they are small steps, my friends, that will make potentially big differences, not only to you and your speaker business, but to the PSA as an association and to the way your customers love you. Wouldn't that be great in 2024? I talk often about ladies and gentlemen. You know, it's something we've talked about it a lot, I think, across the PSA, but I still hear it. I hear it on shows. I hear about guys and all those kind of things. We hear that all the time, these gendered terms. But let me just put it a slightly different way. We're all professionals, right? Who here's got a LinkedIn account? Okay, great. I'm not going to ask you to raise your hand on this, But I want you to reflect on who here does not display their pronouns on their LinkedIn account. Super easy to do. Doesn't mean you're gay, doesn't mean you're hiding something. What it means is I'm being proactive in my quest for inclusion. That's all it means, right? That's all it means to me. But if you're saying on a sales call, for example, to a client who says, we've got quite a diverse audience, and you say, oh yeah, I'm very much around inclusion me, that client's only got to look at your LinkedIn profile and not see something as simple, as small, and as harmless, right? As harmless to you, but actually as beneficial to the world as your pronouns. And they might be thinking, well, hang on a minute, I'm not quite sure that this person is, who said they like the word congruent? Dave. Yeah. They're not quite congruent. So be thinking about all of those things. We've talked a lot, talking about Dave, we talked a lot about slides today. Kind of on the fence, as you can see, I'm not using any slides today, I rarely do. Because, once again, it is about thinking who's going to be in the room and who will get the most from what it is you're delivering, right? So rather than the message that I'm giving, it's about the message that everybody else is receiving, right? That's the way I look at it in terms of slides. Potentially, however, of course, don't forget you can, of course, caption things. Those are the simple things. You can also do live subtitles on slides. You can also speak your slides, and I don't mean a gazillion bullet points, but I mean if there's an image or something, then you can speak it if necessary. So just think a little differently about how you are, I guess, universally designing your offering. Because chances are if it works for one, it works for all, right? So these should be things to think about. There are more things on the handout, but I wanted to tell you an extra little bit around that story, because you remember how long it was ago, right? Yeah, I'm 51 now, so I think, something like that. You lose, you stop counting day after about 48. But anyway, so this was a long time ago when I was 15. And my dad, it was just before the pandemic, really matter-of-factly, right, said to me, he said, hey, Jackie, he said, do you ever remember that day with that old house when you were 15 and we were down in the garage, you told me you were gay? I said, funnily enough, Dad. Yeah. He said, I've always felt guilty about that. I said, what? He said, yeah. He said, I called you queer. And that wasn't very nice, right? And words do matter. And I'm very aware that many people use the term queer to self-identify now. It's seen as a very uplifting, liberating, and joyful term, actually, for those people. But of course, the term queer used to be a derogatory term. And back then, that was actually how my father had used the term, right? So he'd felt guilty about that. Words really do matter. We won't always get it right. I don't always get it right, yeah. But think a little differently, because that will give you a different result. By the way, I reminded him that I remembered that encounter for very different reasons. Wow. And I guess one final little story I'll tell you, right? Because we've talked about in crowds, feeling like the outsider, all those kind of things. But I will tell you this story about when I was very much part of the in crowd. I was 12, and I was going off to France for the first time on a school trip. I was thrilled. Why? Well, two reasons. One, my family wasn't particularly well off, and so it was the first time I had the opportunity to go abroad. Super excited. Number two, even at 12, I was actually quite gifted when it came to speaking foreign languages, right? So I was really excited to be able to use them, right? So anyway, my popular group of friends, and off we all went to Normandy. And we found ourselves in this little place called Grandville, or Granville, Granville. We're in Granville. So we're in Granville, in Normandy. And of course we had lots of things to do. We were like young school kids, we had lots of activities, but we had some free time as well. And this particular day we had some free time. There were three of us, a couple of friends and myself, walking down the street. We came across the boulangerie, the baker. We decided we'd go in, buy a cake. I thought, great, here we go. I've got an opportunity to use my French. And in we walk. And I start talking some very broken, really, French with the boulangère, the baker. And actually, I have to say, he must have realised I was a 12-year-old schoolgirl, English schoolgirl, right? And but he decided to flatter me anyway. He said, tu parles français très bien, très bien. You speak very well, good French. And, well, I was thrilled, I'm not going to lie. But I wanted to play it down in the moment. And I wanted to say, yeah, oui, un petit peu, which is, you know, just a little. But in that moment, I actually said, oui, un petit pois. Which is peas, yeah, absolutely, just in case you don't speak French. And he laughed. And my friends laughed. And I was mortified. So embarrassed. What happened from there? What do you think? What happened from there? I stopped trying. We will not always get it right. Diversity and inclusion, diversity, equity and inclusion is not really a kind of here and now. It's almost like it's a destination, right? They're kind of outcomes that we want to have inclusion. We want to all belong, not despite who we are, but because of who we are, right? We all want that. Equity. Why shouldn't everyone get what they uniquely need, right? In order to have the same opportunities. We all want that. That is an outcome we're looking for. Diversity, yeah, it's a fact. We're all diverse. We have different characteristics. But actually to increase that, that's a destination, right? So that we're making the most of everybody. And we will make mistakes on that journey. And the important thing is not to shy away from making those mistakes, because we are all human at the end of the day. But it is to really think about if we are, let's say somebody addresses a mistake that we make, even if we don't believe it's done in the best way, right? That we accept it with the good grace that it's intended. And we think about how we can make changes. And really, you know, is there anyone in here that if I approached you and said, I'm not quite sure how to address you, or I think I might have said this wrong, could you please correct me? Or how do I pronounce your name? Or whatever. You know, there are very few people that would be offended or upset by that. But some people might say, oh, I think you could have done that about that in a different way. Okay, fair enough. Take it on the chin and keep evolving and keep trying, because that's what it's all about. Don't do what I did with French and the French thing. Just one mistake, you feel embarrassed, you're put on the spot, you stop trying. My parents and I guess we evolved our journey for a long, long time. But I became one of those lucky people who was accepted, not just accepted actually by my family, but then I was continue to be loved by my family, and still am to this day. I feel very, very lucky for that. And it's one of the main reasons actually that I'm so passionate about all of us coming together to really make a difference to the world of speaking and speaker businesses. Because trust me, when we truly leverage the potential of humanity in all its forms, the possibilities, they really are endless. And the return on that kind of investment. I'm nearly finished, so take it now. The return on that investment is really priceless. It will leave your customers loving you. It will make PSA the speaking association, and it will make each and every one of us stand out for all the right reasons. Thank you.